Hey everyone, I have Bryan Anderson from the Equity Smart Real Estate Services on this podcast, and he's going to be talking about his story and all of his experiences. So here he is.
Well, thanks for having me. So I started in the real estate game on accident. I was a mortgage loan originator since 2002, but I didn't really get involved in real estate until COVID hit. So I was working a full-time job driving from Oceanside, California, which is where I'm at right now, to La Jolla every single day for work for a private equity firm that I was a sales coach. And when COVID hit, the place just shut down. So I decided to do what some of my clients were doing in using other people's money to build wealth. Kind of had my back up against the wall. And knowing everything about different type of loan programs, I decided to start taking advantage of some of those loan programs and start working as a real estate agent. So I just recently got my real estate license on top of my ALO. I want to say about a year ago, and I started flipping homes about 2020 is when I did my first home flip. So I picked up a house in Mission Viejo, California for 942. I put about 30 grand into it, sold it for 1.36. And since then, I've just got the fever for it. Now I'm hunting the deals. I'm writing my own loans. I'm representing myself as the buyer and a dual agent on the flip, and it's become a way of life for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's impressive to start with that background. And flipping is honestly a great way to make money in the real estate industry as well. So, how do you actually stay competitive in a challenging market where there's low inventory and low demand currently, and it's
But
fluctuating?
I think it's really interesting because it depends on who you ask. You talk to some real estate agents, all they do is show homes or sell homes. They're going to give you a very different answer. I'm not relying on the market in order to make money because, again, I'm representing myself as the buyer agent and also a dual agent on the flip. I'm relying on the flips to make more money. I've seen a lot of agents. I think there's about 50, 60% of them here in California that haven't made a single sale this year. So, last year in 2024 didn't make a single sale. So they're all kind of hurting if they're looking for just representing the buyer. And with the new NAR rules representing the buyer, buyer just wants to get into a house. They just want to see the house. They don't want to sign a piece of paper with an exclusive right to represent buyer. So they're calling up the seller agent, and seller agents are doing deals all day and all night. So everybody's focused on trying to find the listing. I'm on over here, not even worried about that. I'm actually capitalizing on the market because we're in kind of a strange, volatile state. Um, there are really only three type of properties that are on the market right now, and that's the cosmetic flips, a turnkey, cosmetic, turnkey deal. There's an outdated cosmetic flip, and then there's the, new builds. Well, if you look at who's buying and who's selling right now, it's very different from what we've ever seen in the past. So the average seller, according to the National Association of Realtors in California, is 63 years old. That's the new median age. It's never been that high before. So what's happening is the sellers are people who are either moving to a 55 plus community, they're moving closer to family where they can get more support, or they're moving out of bigger homes to downsize. They need to get away from the stairs. Well, if that's the majority of the sellers, and then you have to look at who's buying the property. So the number one buying segment are the millennials, followed by the 4+ crowd. Now in California, it's very unique. The millennials want turnkey. They want efficient. They want somewhere near a lifestyle. They don't want to water a yard. They just want easy. So they're fine with the little small places that are close to the beach or close to a lifestyle. The average age in California for someone to start a family is closer to 38 to 40 years old. So they're waiting a lot longer before they need these big houses out in the suburbs. And if you do the math, if it's $50 a square foot to remodel a property, a 2,000 square foot home in the suburbs is a lot more expensive to remodel than a 1,250 square foot condo right by the beach. If it's $50 a square foot and you're just going over math, it actually is easier to remodel these smaller units. So to answer your question, I've completely taken the whole, relying on buyers and sellers out of the equation. I'm looking at who are the buyers, who are the sellers. I'm buying from the 63-year-olds and I'm selling to the millennials. And that is just how I've been able to capitalize in this very strange market.
Yeah, that's so clever. And honestly, more agents should do that. But honestly, if you're just, yeah. So when it actually comes to affording things, you actually have alternative financing options that we were talking about before, which is DSCR loans and hard money loans. How are they
Yeah.
actually shaping the market right now?
It's really a great question. So DSCR, for those who don't know, it's called debt service coverage ratio. These are asset-based loans. You can do fix and flip, or you can do fix and hold type loans. Well, the DSCR just takes into consideration the potential rents, so the market rents for a market. So if it's short term, they're looking at Airbnb through a website called AirDNA. That's what the lenders are looking at to determine how much money this property is generating. So they look at the net operating income, take the gross income minus out the expenses and overhead to figure out the net operating income. If that number is greater than the cost of holding the loan, you can get a loan without having to prove any income documentation whatsoever. It's just all based on the asset. If it needs a remodel before you can rent it out, or if you're just looking to do a flip, then they do it based on the after repair value. So they'll look at three market after repair sold properties that sold for X amount, and they'll lend you up to 75% of that ARV without any income documentation, just based on the asset itself. That's changed everything. I mean, when you think about the average first-time home buyer in California being closer to 40 years of age, they're not even looking to buy. These are forever renters in many cases. They're waiting longer to start a family, and the cost of housing is so great that you need to save up two, three, four, $500,000 in order to buy that house. So when you're looking at the bigger picture here, there's too many ways to capitalize, if you will, on the renters. I mean, California is a little bit different than Colorado in the sense that 45% of all the residential properties in California are occupied by tenants. So the investors are gobbling up. We've got institutional investors, we've got mom and pop shop type investors like me that own 10 or 12 properties. There's very few folks that are in a younger age group that really can afford to buy a home right now, or that are wanting to. I mean, they're still building the career in order to survive in this market. I grew up in Colorado. I grew up in Colorado Springs. I mean, we bought our first home when we were 23. So it's a very different time. The market has completely changed. But to capitalize on what that looks like, you buy a rental, you put a renter in place. You can pretty much count on income coming in, and it's very competitive. People out here by the coast are paying somewhere between $5,000 to $6,000 a month, and that's for a midterm or a long-term rental. I mean, short-term, there aren't too many short-terms around here because of some of the rules and regulations that have changed. But it's shocking how many people will rent out a place for 30 days. They'll only stay for a week, but they're renting the place out for 30 days because it's still cheaper than going to Mission Pacific or the Seabird or one of these giant resorts that they just opened up.
Yeah, that's a lot. And it would be cool to live next to the ocean, but yeah, that's where the ideal property is. But with cities actually implementing Airbnb regulations, and how can investors actually pivot to the midterm or long-term rentals?
It's a great question. So, just kind of mentioned, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of renters out here. In Townsite, Oceanside, for example, everything is local. Real estate's local, but at least in Townsite, which is the downtown area of Oceanside, California, west of the Highway 5, they have only allowed a certain number of short-term rental permits. And once you sell a home that is permitted as a short-term rental, it's not transferable, meaning it loses that ability to be a short-term rental anymore. And they've outlawed short-term rentals on the other side of the 5 completely. So once a home sells, you can't reapply to try to get a permit. There's a limited number of permits and a waiting line like crazy. So what's happening? You got somebody who's an investor, he sells a property and he needs to 1031 exchange that into another rental property as quickly as possible. Well, he can either go all the way out to Fallbrook and buy some giant mansion that will appeal to, people visiting the wineries and wedding venues and that sort of thing, or he can buy one of these. Like this property right here is about 1,300 square feet. And yeah, it's expensive, but if you rent these out fully furnished for 30 days or longer, a midterm rental, you can look on VRBO or some of these other websites, and you see these things are renting out fully furnished for $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month. Here's the beauty of it: Airbnb over the course of a year, you might have 50 renters in your house. A midterm renter, we've got in this complex right next to me, there's a family that comes in every year from Arizona for 4 months in a row when it's too hot during the summer. And then as soon as they leave, another family from Minnesota comes in and they spend 4 months out of the year during the winter. And so 8 months out of the year, they've booked in advance for like 4 or 5 years. They've already prepaid in advance. So as a landlord, it's less people in and out, less cleaning. You have people that are moving into that furnished rental and you're renting it out for longer term, but you can still qualify for DSCR loans. As long as you are bringing in more money than what you're having to pay out in principal, interest, tax, insurance, association fees, etc., then you can get a loan on the deal. Now, in order to be DSCR positive to get that type of a loan, you're going to have to drop about $400,000 or $500,000 down in order to make that happen, right? But if they're selling another home in town site and they made $400,000 on the deal, and now they've got a 1031 exchange that to another property, this is way easier to manage. I mean, think about it. Would you rather have 2 renters over the course of a year with 80% occupancy, or would you rather have 50 renters at an Airbnb and have constant issues while they're throwing parties and getting the cops called on the neighbors freaking out and all that kind of fun stuff? So I think it's pretty simple and easy to help coach investors to go from that 1031 short-term rental, which can be quite a headache, into a midterm rental where they can capitalize on the the snowbirds, those that are trying to escape the bad weather. Anyway, if someone's in that situation, that's my favorite. I mean, I pretty much exclusively work with investors on the real estate, the loan side. I do FHA or VA loan. It's going to take like 30, 45 days. You got paperwork, mounds and mounds of paperwork. Well, now things are so much easier. Investors don't have to bring any income documentation to prove. They can transfer a 1031 exchange to a midterm. Everybody wins.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when it comes to flipping properties, actually, what are some challenges and advantages for like the coastal side versus more inland areas that you've experienced, especially like Colorado versus California?
Yeah, great. So it's actually funny that you mentioned that. If you, again, I mentioned a little bit earlier, the average cost here in California, Southern California, per square foot is about $50 to $60 a square foot for remodel. You go inland, you've got the bedroom communities. These are 2,500 to 3,500 square foot homes. They have 4 bathrooms. Well, if the average cost for remodeling a bathroom is $30,000 and you got 4 of them, you're already into a remodel $120,000 before you even touch the kitchen. Whereas if you remodel something like this, I remodeled this entire unit for under $35,000. So it's going to have a higher upside. Your cost for flipping is considerably lower. And my son, who lives in Colorado Springs, because we have family out there, wanted to prove a point, because it's like, well, yeah, you can do that in California, but you can't do it here in Colorado. And so my wife and I moved. We both are remote workers. So we moved to Colorado Springs to an area called Banning Lewis Ranch. I found a property. This is mostly VA because it's right smack dab. You're in Colorado, Colorado Springs is, Peterson Air Force Base, Fort Carson, NORAD, the Air Force Academy. It's all like right there, Space Force. So I knew I was getting into a VA situation. VA likes to have 100% turnkey. They do have rehab programs, but for people that want to use their benefits, they want to move into a turnkey. They just got stationed in the area. They want to walk in and buy a house. And they're not too worried about the interest rates because the military subsidizes for for housing. So, and they get all these great benefits. So I went out there and I found a property where the backyard patio was sinking. It lost about 6 or 7 inches and water was starting to get into the window wells. Well, the owner was open door. They bought it sight unseen, didn't understand all of that. They don't really have a infrastructure to remedy big problems. So I got out there, I picked up the property, I negotiated a $480,000 purchase price. I spent $30,000 on it, and I left and sold it for $610,000. You can look at 8087 in Bangalore Ranch. But when you look at the math, that made up $55,000 on that flip after capital gains tax and everything else. Well, the one I mentioned in Mission Viejo at 23586 Via Navarra, I think is the address. I put the same amount of money into remodeling that property, and I made a $300,000 net profit after capital gains tax and agent fees. So, as far as I'm concerned, markets like California, where the risk is bigger, the reward is bigger, right? You don't necessarily have to qualify for a loan. Everybody's scared that they need to go in and bring in their tax return, business and personal, and prove all their income to buy an investment property. You don't have to. So it doesn't matter how big it is. The lender will go up to $20 million. You just have to have 70% or 75% of the after repair value on a flip. So the bigger the deal, the bigger the reward. And if you can find a bigger reward and a lower cost to flip because it's a smaller size unit like one here on the coast, I mean, it's a win-win-win all the way around. I would prefer to do flips in somewhere like California, but it doesn't mean you can't find deals in Colorado. It doesn't mean that those options aren't available in other markets. It's just that the cost of rehab, material, equipment, and labor in Colorado Springs was exactly the same as it was in Mission Viejo. There's no difference. You know what I'm saying? So the cost of material, lumber, labor, everything is about the same. I was shocked to see actually how expensive Colorado Springs has become. So why would you limit yourself to a market just because it's safe? It's less money out of pocket. Well, you have to have 10% down. So if you only have $50,000 to put down on a flip, then great, go to Briarthorn. But if you have 100,000 to put down on a flip, you go to Mission Viejo. You know what I'm saying? It really comes down to how do you really get started? And in my case, and I don't mean to drag this answer on a little bit, but in my case, when I first started, I didn't have any money to put down. I had just lost my job. I got a new job that was 100% remote, and I qualified. There's a billion programs out there. Every state has them. I think California has 260 down payment assistance programs. They even have a Fannie Mae First Look Home Path website where you can go check out homes, and investors aren't allowed to touch them for 30 days if it's your primary residence. Well, the Live in Your Flip version that I've come up with, and I actually put together an entire website on coaching people for free how to do this, bryanandersonCAML.com. You go in there, you look at how do I get started? What kind of loans can I get for a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac renovation loan? You can get an FHA 203K, you can get a home ready or a one of these different type of loans that they'll pay 100% financing, get into a home. You buy a home that is a cosmetic flip. It's outdated. And over the course of maybe 6 months or a year, you do the renovations as you can afford to do them. Or you can get the money directly from that loan if it's priced right. So you can buy a home, no money out of pocket, and actually have it renovated by the lender. And then you can turn around, and as long as you hold it for like a year or two and then sell it, you're going to reduce your capital gains tax. It's your primary residence, so you get better, quality financing. And then when you sell it, you can take that lump sum of cash that you just earned, and now you can play with the hard money loans. So there's a lot of people that I counsel that say, Bryan, I just don't have enough money to get started. You don't need money to get started. Well, I don't have the best FICO score. Hard money loans don't care about your FICO score. I don't have a down payment. There are 260 down payment assistance programs in California. There's probably just as many in Colorado. You just have to search for it. Now, loan officers don't want to tell you about these programs if they're not already an approved lender for that program. So, my sister has a home in Colorado. She didn't know that she qualified for any home loan because she said, well, I owned a home before. I don't qualify for first-time home buyer programs. Most people don't know that if you haven't been on title of a property for at least 2 years, you now qualify anywhere in the USA as a first-time home buyer. So she took a 9-hour little class online. She got $9,000 towards her closing costs, and she bought a house. This was somebody who was a renter and hadn't owned a home in a few years, but didn't think she qualified. So I think a lot of it is just, overcoming your fear and saying, I am worthy, and then saying, I'm just going to do it. It's easy for me to lecture that. I got pushed up against a wall when I lost my job and I became 100% remote. And I said, man, I'm going to start doing what my clients were teaching me. I'm a little bit worried. But that's my best advice to anybody who's thinking about getting involved in real estate is you don't need to have perfect FICO. You don't need to have 12 months worth of reserves. There are ways for you to get into the game using the same amount of money you were paying for rent. So before I bought that house in Mission Viejo, I was renting one of these condos for about $4,000 a month. my mortgage payment, tax, insurance, everything in Mission in Mission Viejo, I think was about $4,200. It was the same thing I was paying in rent without money to pocket, and then I walked away with $300,000 in cash. So yes, you can, and it's not that hard.
Oh, 100%. That's remarkable that you're able to not only invest in the Colorado market or in California market, but also Colorado and profit either ways. Like there's opportunities everywhere. You're maximizing on it. You're doing a lot of renovations, flipping it. It's really solid performance you're doing. So when it actually comes to renovating strategies, what is the best way to do it without overcapitalizing and like maximizing property value?
So my advice is always find a cosmetic flip where you don't have to change the footprint. A footprint is your electrical, your plumbing. You're putting in a new drain, installing, creating a new bathroom. I want to knock down this wall, and it's a load-bearing wall. Anytime there's permits involved, you're dragging on the time. Every month that goes by, you have holding costs for your loan in order to do it. Everything is tied to that holding cost, right? So if you were buying $1 million property, and your monthly payment for principal, interest, tax, insurance, and association is 10 grand a month, and you can get it completely renovated in 60 days, it's going to save you a lot more money than if it takes you, let's say, 6 months to do it, right? So $60,000 is your holding cost versus maybe 20,000 being your holding cost. So find a place that is a cosmetic flip. Look for major issues. So you put a contingency on the inspection of the foundation and the roof. And who cares if the kitchen refrigerator is new or not? You're going to throw it out anyway. But look for the things that really do matter. Also, I would highly recommend when you're searching for a home, look for 1978 or newer. Anything older than 78, you're going to have asbestos, you're going to have lead-based paint, you're going to have all these other issues. You're probably going to have to do PEX piping because they use the old plumbing lines. So I always look for, in my search filters, I'll go into, like, let's say Zillow, and I'll put down 1980 up to 2000 because that range of 20 years, you're going to find a lot more people who have original homes. They've been well kept, they're just outdated. And it's usually a 63-year-old that is moving into a 55 plus or moving at home closer to the family. You pick up a property that is in great condition. It's just ugly carpet and old tiled cabinets, that kind of stuff. It's a lot easier to work on those than to get in, like, let's say, a 1940 house that has a lot of deferred maintenance. You know what I'm saying? The other thing I would highly recommend doing is you look at 3 recent sales in that area, because you're basing everything off the after repair value comps, right? Low stuff of it, everything is based off of, you don't want to overspend. If the last 3 homes that sold in that market had granite countertops and you go in with the cheap linoleum, you're not going to get the same price out of it. So your job is to make your subject property look just like those 3 ARV comps without spending a penny more. You don't want a lipstick on a pig, but at the same time, you want your property to be truly comparable to the 3 most recent. So if I'm looking up a property and I see it's in distress, and let's say it's priced at $780,000, and there are 3 comps that recently sold right next door, same square footage and everything, for $1 million, right? You think, oh, that's a great deal. Well, you got $300,000 margin to play with, and you can get the loan on the deal. So you go in, and that's really what you want to do, is look at, well, what kind of material did they use? If they spent $250,000 upgrading those homes, your margin's only 50. If they spent $120,000 upgrading those homes and they got that $1 million, great, now I've got a bigger margin. So speed of holding costs, age of the property, and really just look at the ARV comps that are out there and literally just try to copy what they did, because your appraiser's going off that. For your buyer, the appraiser is going to go off that. And if it doesn't appraise for enough and you just overspent on these expensive add-ons, shame on you. You just threw away money for no reason. If you opened up a wall that didn't need it and it took you 3 extra months to put in a retaining wall and wait for the beam and wait for permits, you just threw away $30,000 for no reason. The comps didn't need it, then you didn't need it. So like on this deal right here, the one behind me, all of the comps in the area that sold for 1.4 or higher had the original countertops, and they had the original cabinets. So what I did is I just painted the cabinets and reglazed the countertops. So if I were to redo all the cabinets and countertop, I'd be into it about $30,000 just for the kitchen. But instead, I only spent about $8,500 on the kitchen. So really, you have to make sure that you're always identifying your comps, because that's what your home will likely sell for. Now, things can change. The market immediately shifts, and interest rates drop 2%. The home will spike up in value another 100,000, because here in California, everybody's sitting on the sidelines. Right? There are people who own homes that will be sellers that are enjoying 2.9% interest rate. They don't want to sell and trade it for a 7% rate somewhere else unless they're all 100% cash. They don't want to do that. So they're sitting on the sidelines, and they know that their home will be worth more money if they wait for the rates to drop. When the rates are high is the best time to go hunting for deals if you're an investor. And so I'm looking for that perfect storm. Over 1980, I don't have to change a footprint. I'm not looking to knock out any walls, because I've looked at the comps and I know exactly what I have to do to make my subject property look like the ARV comps.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's a good way to go about it. Definitely over 1980s. That's interesting about 1978. Didn't really know that, but definitely a good idea not to dabble in those old homes anyway, because it could be lead to
Yeah.
a lot of other problems like walls not being held up right and all that stuff. But how has your experience as a loan officer and flipper actually helped you better serve clients in the real estate space?
Well, obviously, I know. So some loan officers are just agency loan officers. If you go to a bank, they only have the stuff that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will buy. The secondary market will buy because it meets certain qualifications. Well, my company, the company that I hang my hat with, which is Equity Smart Home Loans, are huge in California, because they have over 150 lenders that they are either wholesale lenders, correspondent lenders, private money lenders, hard money lenders, capital investment companies. So when we get somebody who wants to buy a house, I can find a loan where most loan originators can't. When it comes to real estate, if you're just an agent listing, anybody can list a property. But to be able to have that knowledge of 1031 exchanges, of how to identify, walk into a property and know how old it is and say, man, this is going to need PEX piping. It's going to need, a popcorn ceiling removal, which is going to be asbestos. I mean, you can go through and look for those little mold spots, like stuff that I learned, in my experience of what to look for. I'm helping buyers, I'm helping sellers avoid big, huge mistakes. So yeah, I mean, having all these different type of loan programs, I love helping investors get started in real estate. I love building my future pipeline. So I know what to look for, and I know how to help them be successful in any situation. Because at the end of the day, I'm building my future pipeline myself. If I teach them how to get started with no money out of pocket and do a live-in-year flip and get some capital going, and now they've got cash to put down on more and more properties, I can walk them through the process. The average investor, the mom-and-pop investor, buys a property or refinances a property at least, one a year minimum. But if your primary residence buyer only buys a property or refinances once every 7 years. So I've got like one client who has 14 properties, and he had me refinance all of them, and then he turned around and bought 7 more. So from that one guy, I got 21 loans out of the deal, and I've got to play that role because I could move money away from portfolio loans. I can look at, hard money loans and all of these different options that weren't really available to him before. So having that wealth of knowledge, having gone through the fire myself, I've learned quite a bit when it comes to the loan process and when it comes to, helping people list their property the way they want to. I mean, I've got a relationship with 2 different giant contractor companies that will, let's say that you're listing your property, but you don't have any money to fix it up. And you know that if you fix it up, it's going to be worth $300,000 more, but it's going to cost about 120 grand to get there. Well, if you come to me, I can bring in my contractor network. We'll remodel the house with no money out of pocket that you pay for when you sell. It comes out of the proceeds of that, signing the loan when somebody buys your house. So it's almost like a second mortgage. So I'm putting a second mortgage on your house for the enhancements. You don't have to pay anything until the home sells. There's a lot of opportunity most people just don't know about. So when I come in with those solutions, yeah, people are ready to jump on board. I think that's huge.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I appreciate you being on the podcast. There was a lot of insight, and I'm thankful for your time as well.
Yeah, thank
Is
you
there
for having
anywhere?
me. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, awesome. Where can they reach out to you about?
So I'm available, pretty much whenever. You can give me a call. My phone number is 760-492-1113. I am licensed in California, both as a real estate agent and a mortgage loan originator. And if you know anything about hard money loans, you don't need a license to do hard money loans. I can do hard money loans anywhere in the USA pretty much. So you're looking to invest, you're looking to make some profit on properties. You're looking to buy in this market and get your hands on some midterm rentals by the beach. Give me a call.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, and to everyone watching, just stay tuned for the next episode.
Thanks a lot.